And welcome to episode 13 of Unpopular Opinion. I'm your host, Mika Gat, joined alongside my weekly panelists. On my left of Mr. Ayush and Mr. Kyle Pucci. And this week we have a very special guest, a returning guest, Mr. Smith, to talk some more college football with us.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Yeah, Happy New Year's. Yeah, welcome. I'm going to call this season 2 of the show. New year, new season, may as well. So today is Friday, so in 3 days is the national championship game. And that game has had it's been 2 weeks since a little bit less than 2 weeks since these teams have played. And we'll get to the teams that they played in a little bit, but I want predictions for this upcoming Monday. Who's going to win and why? Let's start with Mr. Smith.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on again. And obviously, the Monday night game is the culmination of a challenging yet still a really successful season. I mean, considering where we were with the Big Ten and the Pac-12, not even thinking they were going to play, and so I'm just encouraged that we were able to get some semblance of football. In terms of the game itself, I think it's going to be very tight. I think it's going to be a really close game. I'm leaning towards Alabama. I just think they're a little bit more balanced with the run and the pass. I think if they are cut off one way, they can go the other. I think Mac Jones is pretty smart, throws really, really consistent balls. And I think what's going to happen is it's going to be a tight game until maybe the mid-fourth quarter, and Alabama's then going to score a touchdown, maybe get a turnover, maybe put one more away, and they're going to use Najee Harris in the running game. They're going to wind down some clock. That being said, it wouldn't shock me if Ohio State beat them because I think Ohio State is that talented. I just think that this is the year of Saban and that balanced Alabama team.
Awesome. That's a good input to start off this debate. Ayush, go ahead. What do you think?
I'm going to Ohio State. Trey Sermon, hasn't played all year, then he's a backup these last 2 games. He ran for a big Ohio State record in the Big Ten championship game, and then he ran all over Clemson last week. And then that defense probably made Trevor Lawrence play his worst game of his college football career. 3 fumbles and an interception. And without Travis Etienne wasn't there for some of the game, Trevor Lawrence looked kind of flustered. I don't want to say he looked bad because, he's still probably the best talent-wise quarterback in the college. And I think if Justin Fields can make consistently good throws, not turn the ball over, I think he'll be the X factor in this game. If his ribs aren't affecting him that much after that hit he took on Saturday, I believe.
Yeah, it was the Saturday game.
And I think Justin Fields, if he plays out of his mind, they could pull off the upset.
Kyle, what do you think?
I thought long and hard about this. I'm going Ohio State. At first, I thought Alabama, but I thought about some more factors, and Ohio State, I think, easily had the tougher game going up to the championship than Alabama did. I know that Notre Dame is good, but people say, well, they beat Clemson. You know what? They beat Clemson without Trevor Lawrence. It's a pretty big deal. I believe Dabo Swinney just gave Ohio State a lot of motivation for ranking them as the 11th, which I have something to say later about that.
We'll talk about that a little bit.
In our last college football show, I said Justin Fields is going to win the Heisman Trophy. He's not, obviously, he didn't win the Heisman Trophy, but I still think he's the real deal, and I think he's gonna pull this off. I just think Ohio State looks very motivated, and I think they're gonna get it done.
Well, for my pick, I'm going to have to actually agree with Mr. Smith. Well, first of all, Alabama, I think on paper is just the better team. But for the one person we haven't talked about is the actual Heisman winner this year, Devontae Smith. So pretty much when Jalen Waddle went down, because he was the original number 1 receiver, he wasn't going to have the same season as Devontae did, but Devontae had probably one of the best college football seasons. Definitely he broke a bunch of Alabama records. If not the best college football season for a wide receiver we've ever seen, one of the best seasons for a wide receiver. So I think that's actually going to be the X factor in this game. I do agree that Najee Smith in the fourth quarter is going to be huge, but I think the Mac Jones to Smitty, as they call him, connection, I don't know how Ohio State's going to stop that, especially that, like you said, Fields is a little bit banged up. They had a really short season. They don't have as much team chemistry as a team like Mac Jones and Devontae Smith has, especially since Matt Jones is a senior and he's been in that system for 4 years. And you're from Alabama. You play for that championship game. So this is when you go and perform. And Mac Jones was nominated for Heisman for a reason. That's one of the highest scoring Alabama teams, I think, ever that Nick Saban's had. So I don't know how they're going to stop him, because they should have beat Notre Dame by a lot more points. And I think it's not going to be close. I think they win by 2 touchdowns. Well,
I mean, that short season might benefit them. They could be fresher. I mean, Trey Sermon's definitely fresher.
That. Yeah.
I mean, Trey Sermon's running like his life depends on it right now.
That is true.
I mean, Northwestern was one of the best defenses in the country, and Trey Sermon comes out, runs for 320 yards on them.
One of the things I thought was interesting at the Ohio State-Clemson game was Fields and his use of the tight ends. It was a great scheme. Ohio State's wide receivers are obviously very talented, but I thought they made such great use of their tight ends in that game, and it really confused Clemson. So I think that's obviously going to give Saban some things to look at and some troubles. I think the other thing about this Alabama defense is they maybe aren't as star-studded as some other groups have been. I just think from a standpoint of a compiled defense, they really play with a lot of unity. They really work together well. I think it's going to be a fantastic game. The Jalen Waddle piece is interesting. I know he's a game-time decision. I don't think he's going to have a major impact. It's kind of hard for a guy just to come in and do that. And let's not forget, a lot of his work is done on punt returns and kick returns. Not even sure if they're going to want to have him back there for that, because he's going to have a pro career. But I think Waddle will bring some emotional support if they do see him coming out there. It'll just fire up the guys. And what Alabama has done as the year has progressed is Devontae Smith has been unstoppable, but even when they have doubled him, Mechie and Forrestal, these other guys they have, and let's not forget, this is Alabama. All these guys are 4- and 5-star blue chippers, and Ohio State is pretty close. So I do think the best 2 teams are in it, which is all we can ask for. I think we're going to see NFL caliber play. And as usual, it's probably going to come down to a key turnover at some point in the game. I just happen to think Alabama's got the slight edge, but by no means do I see this being a walkover.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think that even Devontae Smith, the Heisman Trophy winner, he averaged around 2 touchdowns per game during the regular season. He goes into the playoffs against Notre Dame, which we'll talk about, should they have been there, should they have not. He had 3 touchdowns against them. So maybe he even stepped up his game. You don't know that, because if he's playing on another level than he did in the regular season, that's just a problem for Ohio State. They're going to have to double him, and they're going to leave, like Mr. Smith, somebody open.
Well, as Ayush said, when you said that Alabama's had way more time playing, it's also the same reason why it could benefit Ohio State, because they might have some more teams get very banged up toward the end of the year, as we know, and I don't like to bet with the banged up odds.
That's true. Well, that's why Jalen Waddle's coming back. That's a huge comeback. Well, it's game time decision, but if he does come back, that's a huge comeback.
And the other night, and awards don't always determine the outcomes of games, but the center for Alabama, as well as their left tackle, Leatherwood, were given top lineman honors. Best line in the entire college football was rated to be Alabama. Offense, I think, in this day and age wins, and with that offense, you got to have a really good offensive line that can both pass block and run block.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, let's move on to the next question, because I like to bring up a lot of Devontae Smith and the Heisman win that he had this year. So my question for you guys is the greatest Heisman campaign by a player. So who had the greatest Heisman season in the history of college football? Let's start with Mr. Kyle Pucci.
I'm going Joe Burrow. I think that's the easy answer to this. Yeah, no offense. I didn't put too much thought into it, because Joe Burrow came up immediately. He had 4,700 pass yards, 48 touchdowns, while having 289 yards and 3 scores on the ground, too. I mean, he had, I think, 78% completion percentage. That's just runaway the greatest Heisman. It's the greatest Heisman percentage ever. Just run away. I think he was just, I don't know, he was too good.
Yeah, well, Mr. Smith, what do you think?
It doesn't sadden me, but it perplexes me that I'm actually going to agree with Kyle.
Wow.
because Kyle and I don't see eye to eye a lot. But I have to say, I think in this case, I think he's right. We're looking at a modern perspective, and that doesn't take away from anything from these guys from the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and 70s and so on. And let's not forget Archie Griffin did it twice. That being said, Burrow had a great cast around him, but you still have to deliver the goods. And Burrow was so calm and cool in the pocket against Texas, against Alabama, against Auburn, consistently just stepped up and made the key plays and had complete confidence in his ability, and I think the players around him, he made them even better. So I think in the modern era, I'd have to say, Burrow. I will say this just about the Heisman, if I can. DeVonta Smith, I think, is a fantastic choice. I love it for the fact that it's recognizing somebody besides a quarterback, because I think a lot of times it goes to the quarterbacks, and sometimes there's some real skepticism that, is this just an award for quarterbacks? So the fact that DeVonta got it was really important, I think, for the college game, for the integrity of the Heisman per se. And, probably in most cases it will be a quarterback just because of the amount of influence they have over the game. But I think they made the right choice this year.
Absolutely. Ayush, what do you think?
I'm going to go with someone more not so recent. I'm going to go Barry Sanders.
Ooh.
I mean, he had, I believe, 37 touchdowns and 2,400 yards. He averaged
Oh, history lesson for us. I like it.
There we go.
A lot of touchdowns.
He averaged 8 yards a carry, which is almost a first down a carry, which is pretty impressive. And then, I mean, just the fact that I think that was just, 8 yards a carry, 2,400 yards, 39 touchdowns. I don't think you're ever going to see another season like close to that. And it was his first year as a starter, too, and because he was backing up, I think, Thurman Thomas that year.
Yeah,
It was really impressive. Well, I'm pretty sure I told Kyle yesterday not to pick Joe Burrow because that's who I wanted to pick.
Well, I don't really care what you say, Mika.
Well, Kyle still obviously wanted to pick Joe Burrow, and I obviously agree with that. Not only did he have such a good season, but he also probably had the best story ever. This was a backup quarterback from Ohio State that transferred to LSU. He wasn't going to go anywhere. There's no way he had NFL aspirations or anything. He also came from a very, very small, poor town in Ohio, very place that didn't have a lot of future and some ways that you didn't have a lot of people to look up to and stuff to expect. So the fact that he was able to go with Coach Oregon and that entire LSU system and win, that's very, very impressive for Joe Burrow, and he set a lot of records doing it. But although he was the best player, I definitely am not going to say he was the most exciting college football player, especially for a Heisman. That would, if Mr. Johnny Bennett was here, who sadly isn't here today because he has a little bit of track practice. But I probably would say Johnny Manziel, him or Cam Newton. They had electric seasons. They pretty much revolutionized what college football was. I'm not saying they obviously didn't have the same type of season as Joe Burrow did. They just brought some different type of meaning to the sport of college football.
Yeah, I would agree. I think DeVonta Smith had one of those electric years. I think that's probably one of the reasons why, because people started to try to game plan and scheme against him, and you still couldn't do it. I can't tell you the last time I remember seeing a guy catch a ball in the slot and then just run by 8 people, without being touched. It was amazing. It seemed, announcers would say that it seemed like players had angles on him, and then not only did he beat the angle, but he wasn't touched. I mean, that's just electric speed. His story is great too. Small kid, small town. His speech was great the other night, talking about, you're a small kid and maybe not a lot of people think that you're going to do big things, but you got to keep pushing yourself, and he's proven it, and will be proving it on Sundays in the NFL with a very large chunk of money in his pocket.
Sure.
Yeah.
You would, so during the Heisman, you were just saying that his entire family, that entire town, was sitting there watching him get the Heisman Trophy, which, I mean, like everybody else, like Trevor Lawrence had his family just in the stadium with him, and it's kind of weird just to see it's like, it feels more like a person-to-person interaction, not that it's about the money and about the fame, it's about where you come from and your entire community and your family, the people that support you, which is also just a great story behind it.
Yep, he got out of LSU, was not able to get him, recruit him, and snag him and sign him, and that's unusual because LSU does not let very many players out of the state. So, very interesting story.
Yeah. You guys have anything else to say until we move on? All right. Well, let's move on to a little bit of a recap of the games that happened about a week and a half ago. So first of all, let me just give you a couple storylines going into it. Both games had pretty significant storylines. For the first game, the Alabama-Notre Dame game, there is a lot of heat taken by the committee for putting in Notre Dame over Texas A&M. Well, I want to hear, first of all, do you guys think that was the right, wrong decision? Should they have done that? And then for the second game, the Clemson-Ohio State game, Dabo Swinney went out, as you said, and ranked Ohio State as the 11th team in the nation, saying that just they didn't play enough games and they just didn't play against good competition. So, guys, give me your feedback about what happened in those semifinals games. Let's start with Ayush.
Personally, I would have loved to see Florida in the semifinals, but there were 3 lost teams. One of those to Alabama, but one of those losses was to LSU, which was a very big upset, and they had a late fumble against Texas A&M, which is another game they should have won. So if they'd I obviously can't go and change that, but if they also were missing a bunch of players when they only lost by 6 points to Alabama. So if they were fully healthy, I would have loved to see Florida Alabama again, just because I think that would have been a very good matchup. And I also don't think Notre Dame deserved to be in it, or at least they should have put Texas A&M in. They barely beat Clemson without Trevor Lawrence. Then they go and they lose to Clemson by double digits, and then Alabama again just showed why they shouldn't have been in the college football playoffs.
Absolutely. All right, Mr. Smith, what do you think?
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion. So, I think Texas A&M certainly had an argument, although they were beat pretty handily by Alabama early in the year, but I think they were playing really good football. And I think part of this is the pressure that it just exists, and the committee would never admit it, but the pressure to not have 2 SEC teams in it, because there's always that speculation that happens. They ended up putting 2 ACC teams in it, and those teams in that conference ended up going 0-6 during bowl season. So I think there's a little bit of egg on the face. That 4th slot is generally difficult to begin with. Personally, I was disappointed that Cincinnati didn't get more credit as they were going through the season. I understand you can't put them in as the 4th team if they're ranked 8th or 7th or whatever it was. That would have been interesting to me. They played a tough bowl game against Georgia, and I'm not saying that they would have done any better than Notre Dame did. It just would have been interesting to see a Power 5 conference in there. Just to see a different, not the traditional power conferences get a team in. Notre Dame is always a very polarizing choice because there are people that either love them or can't stand them. So until they actually win a playoff game, I think people are going to doubt and never believe that they do belong in it. So my take would have been, it would have been nice had they given a little more love to Cincinnati along the way, and then perhaps if that weren't the case, then they probably should have gone with A&M, who I do think is probably the 4th best team in the country right now.
Absolutely. Kyle, what do you think?
I think A&M definitely has an argument for not being in and putting in Notre Dame. I remember back in the first college football segment, we said that I think we all had Notre Dame actually make, except you, actually. I think me and Ayush both had Notre Dame making it. But then now that I think of it, I don't think they should have. First of all, like Ayush said, they barely beat Clemson without Trevor Lawrence. Not like, and it just, think if you put should a 9-3 team make the playoffs? They would have been 9-3. Florida, I know we didn't play, I get it, but they still would have been 9-3. Everybody knows it. The whole country knows it, and yeah.
Yeah, well, I was able to tune into the Texas A&M versus the UNC game, the bowl game that happened, and I actually saw Texas A&M. They did win. Jimbo Fisher did win that bowl game, but until the 4th quarter, that game was actually neck to neck. And nothing against University of North Carolina, but Texas A&M has all this hype around them that they should have been there over Notre Dame. And they played not amazingly until really the 4th quarter, where UNC made a mistake, and then that was it. That was the game for them.
UNC was also missing 4 starters too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you factor that in, Texas A&M didn't play amazing against a team that they were heavily favored in. How would they have done against Alabama?
UNC also played Notre Dame tough too. Like that, the same story was UNC and Notre Dame were head to head until halftime.
When you look at the top 4 teams, do you want to look at who's playing the best football at the end of the year? Or do you want to look at who has the record? There's a lot of factors that go into it, and I just think that for some of these schools, like Notre Dame's win against Clemson at Notre Dame was impressive. It's a good win. Trevor Lawrence didn't play, however. I just didn't think in some other weeks Notre Dame really played consistently in a dominant fashion. But then again, neither did A&M, and that's why I think that fourth spot, there was really a considerable gap between Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and then the next team. Personally, this would have been a great year to expand the playoffs and to see what happens. NCAA and the college football playoffs, as usual, missed out on an opportunity and just allowed for the debate to continue on of why is Notre Dame in.
Yeah. Cincinnati also showed that they could hang in with an SEC team. Like, they played Georgia till the very end.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and they did a really good job. But I also wanted to say that at the beginning of the year, Notre Dame moved to the ACC for this one season because of the pandemic. So outside of that, I don't think Clemson would have played them in that game where Clemson won by double digits. And if they played them just in the regular season and Notre Dame finished 1-0 against Clemson, we might not be talking about this picture if they never really played the game before. So this is just a what-if hypothetical situation, but just looking back onto it, I think that's something that the committee should improve for next year, picking the 4 best talented teams, not based on the record.
Talent doesn't always translate to winning, though.
Well, that is true, absolutely. But I'm just saying, based on winning and talent, a little bit of a combination of both.
That's why I'm a fan of pushing this to 8 teams. I think you get each of your conference winners get in, and then you've got an ability to do 2 or 3 at-large teams. I just think teams like Brigham Young, I think some of your other independents, even Notre Dame on another year, right? They've complained that being an independent sometimes has been tough. I understand the logistics of going to 8 and how it would be hard. I just think it would give you a better sense. Yes, there would be some games that maybe were blowouts, but when I look at these semifinal games, they're generally not close either.
Yeah, they're usually not.
So their argument of saying we get the top 4, yet we have semifinal games that are pretty much blowouts by the end.
The blowouts last week.
Right.
And last year, too. I mean,
no,
what's the
Clemson, Ohio
difference?
State was pretty close.
well, yeah, but Oklahoma got their they were not even supposed to. They looked like a JV team playing against an NFL team.
Right. Whereas then if you go with the 8, I think you are going to have a couple blowout games, but you're also going to give that team, that Cincinnati, that BYU, that Notre Dame, that opportunity on that given Saturday to win a game, and then let's see what happens.
Maybe USC will finally be able to stop complaining how they go undefeated but never make the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, and I do think that the Pac-12 right now, people are pretty down on them, but I think they'll be back. I think Oregon is a very solid program. Cristobal has done a nice job. He does really well recruiting. We were talking the other day with some friends, and what's interesting for USC and UCLA and even Stanford is some of these kids from California that are top-notch athletes, they're leaving California. And a number of years ago, that never happened. California kept all their talent, and the same goes for Texas. The University of Texas. Right now, Texas is being sort of pilfered by these other schools, including A&M in-state, but University of Texas for years got every kid, everyone, and they just had the top dual threat quarterback in the entire recruiting process decommitted. So a lot of it is around regional recruiting. If USC can gain that back, they'll be back in this playoff before long, simply because the state of California has so much talent.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sam Ellinger also left Texas because their coach got fired, which also could have played into the dual threat.
Sam Ellinger had such good potential, too. He was supposed to be one of the top Heisman finalists, and not the Heisman Trophy winner, and then it all didn't happen. So I think you guys should tune into that Monday college football natty game. It's going to be a lot of fun as we previewed it on the show. But let's move on to another playoff sport that is happening right now, the National Football League, who tomorrow and Sunday, there is 2 triple headers for wild card, how do they call it? Crazy wild card weekend? I don't know how because it's the first year ever they're doing 3 wild card games each day rather than the usual 2. So the question I have for all you guys is, which wild card team
they've got an experienced quarterback. Obviously, we all know Brady and what Brady has done in the playoffs, and he's a big-time player. I just think they have the best chance because some of these other teams, I just feel are pretty weak. I think it's in the AFC. I think it's, the Kansas City Chiefs and then everybody else.
Yeah.
You know, but the NFC, I see it a little more wide open. I think Green Bay is clearly one of the leaders, but I think they could have a game where they falter. And then I look back to when Green Bay and Tampa played. It was eons ago. It was in Tampa. I get that. But I also do feel like maybe that's a matchup that works well. And so if Tampa can beat Washington, which is not a given, but I think they will, then I think they may have one of the best shots as a wild card team to make the Super Bowl.
Kyle, what do you think?
Well, I'm going to go with. Do you want me to go 2 conferences or
Just one team.
Just one? I'm going to go with the Bills,
Buffalo.
which is, kind of pains me to say it, but I think that team's been good all year, and I think Josh Allen has just taken his game to another level. I think Stephon Diggs has been probably the best receiver in the league this year, and I mean, of course, that's debatable for Devontae Adams or someone else like that, but overall, I think Diggs has been the best, and I just think that their defense isn't as good as it used to be, but you look at the conference too, AFC. I mean, there's the Chiefs, but then then there's Pittsburgh, and then there's I think they'll beat the Colts honestly pretty easily this weekend. I don't think the Colts. I think Phillip Rivers has been flamed for a lot of years now, and I just wanted to. I know I'm taking too long, but I just want to respond to Mr. Smith. I hate to say this, but I had them going to the Super Bowl. I don't believe Tampa is really a threat anymore. I just, I looked at. They're like 1-6 or something against playoff teams. It's just their one win was against Green Bay, but I think their coach is an enormous tool. I don't think he knows how to handle a team. And, if Chase Young pops Brady in the first 3 series of their game, I don't know. It's going to be tough, I think. I think they're going to be on him all day, and I don't even know if I see them beating the football team.
Wow. Ayush, what do you think?
I completely disagree with Kyle, but Buffalo, I still don't trust Josh Allen.
You just hate the Bills.
Dude, he looked like a deer in headlights when he played the Texans last year. In that overtime, he had a bad lateral. He was just stumbling all over the place. He looked like he didn't know where he was going.
Okay, that was a year ago.
When he didn't look like that all in the regular season. We just have to see how he does this year.
Ayush, who do you think is going to make the Super Bowl?
I think the Colts are going to be Buffalo, but I think Seattle has the biggest chance.
Really?
Wild card.
Seattle Seahawks.
That defense has been on fire this past couple of weeks. With Jamal Adams coming back, if Russell Wilson can get to his early 5 first regular season form.
Oh, you got Blitz Boy coming back. Big deal.
Dude, he averages a sack a game. If you're telling me any team wouldn't have a safety that averages a sack a game on their team, you're lying.
Yeah, I mean, when you blitz the quarterback every single play, you should have a couple of sacks.
It works. There's nothing. If it works, why would they stop blitzing? And then Russell Wilson, if he can play like he did in the first 5 weeks, that team could be dangerous.
Does anybody here really think, though, that anyone's going to beat KC?
No.
I don't.
No. Yeah.
I do.
No, I don't.
Let me get my 5 cents in. So first of all, I wanted to respond to what Mr. Smith said about Tampa Bay. I do think they match up really well with the Green Bay Packers. The one team from the NFC that they don't match up with is the New Orleans Saints. That not just blew them out once, that blew them out twice. And not only did they blow them out, they did that without Michael Thomas. Well, they did have Michael Thomas in the first game, but the second game without him, they blew him out. They're going to have Michael Thomas back, Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara. Their defense is playing incredibly well, and they have some really good pieces on that defense. There's no way that the Buccaneers can go into New Orleans and beat the Saints. Same thing said about Seattle. I do not think that Seattle can go into New Orleans. That Superdome, they have fans that year, obviously, and it's very, very traumatizing place to play. The one thing that you always know about the New Orleans Saints is they will find a way to lose in the playoffs in some type of heartbreaking way. And let's be honest, it's going to happen at Lambeau. But that's just. But I haven't said which team I think is going to make the Super Bowl because they're not from the NFC. I not only want to say that the Buffalo Bills are going to make the Super Bowl, I think they're going to win the Super Bowl.
Oh, I think that's a stretch.
So, no, let me just throw it out.
I think it's a stretch to say they make it out of the first round.
Okay, well.
I think Phillip Rivers is going to come on fire. This is his last chance.
Phillip Rivers blows, Ayush.
I know he blows, but this is it.
Let me just say my 5 cents. Let me say my 5 cents about Buffalo. So first of all, I think the last 3 games, Josh Allen has been playing out of his mind. Last week, they played the Miami Dolphins, who, by the way, needed to win that game to make the playoffs. not only did they humiliate the Buffalo Bills, they beat them by what, 40 points? With Matt Barkley scoring 2 touchdowns too.
Tua's not it. He had, 4 turnovers that game?
Well, it's the Buffalo defense.
Dude, as soon as they get down, they put Fitzpatrick in. He had COVID last week. Tua played the whole game.
Well, I'm just saying, I think they definitely will beat the Colts because the Colts are good. They're just too inconsistent. They destroyed the Steelers, and they'll do it again. And I do think that Patrick Mahomes versus Buffalo is going to be a really good game. But think about what happened the last time Patrick Mahomes took the field. They should have went to overtime against Atlanta. The Atlanta Falcons, who probably were the worst team in the NFC this year. And because Young Hoku missed an easy 30-yard field goal, they lost. I do agree Kansas City on paper is the best team, but they're very inconsistent.
I mean, don't forget, they already beat Buffalo. Buffalo lost to Tennessee.
How close was that game? Kansas City versus Buffalo?
It wasn't close. It was a double 2-score game. They got blown up by Tennessee. They should have lost. If you want to say they should have gone to overtime.
They also blow out the Steelers.
No, but if you want to say they went to overtime against the Falcons, they should have lost to the Patriots when Cam Newton didn't fumble. And then they beat the Jets by 6 points.
But what I'm saying that you can agree that the last...
You can't just handpick games and say this is the reason they win.
But the recent games, I'd say the past month, the month of December, they have turned on the Jets, and I saw some videos of practicing. They're just pretty much dancing around. They're really not even practicing. They're taking the playoffs as if it's already a given win. They are very confident in themselves.
Okay, well, that's not why I think they're going to win. I just believe it's a team that gets hot at the right time.
That's what I'm saying,
and
the month of
Bills
December, yeah.
Are just, they just look like right now. I'm not going to say they're, because no team is unbeatable, but, honestly, I think Josh Allen maybe has played just as good as Mahomes this year.
Yeah.
Rodgers is my MVP by far, but Mahomes,
took you guys a couple of weeks to admit it.
Shut up. But Mahomes against Josh is not Josh Allen is, I think, played just as well as Mahomes has this year, and I don't like how he's not getting more MVP consideration. Even though I don't think he should win it, he should be in the conversation. And I think it's a joke that Derrick Henry is even getting more consideration than Josh Allen.
Mr. Smith, what do you think?
In terms of the MVP or just overall?
Just what the playoffs are going to look like.
And keep in mind, my reason for Tampa is they are a true wild card team. So when I say Tampa has the best chance of making the Super Bowl, I'm saying that's because they're a wild card, not because they didn't win their division.
Yeah.
So if I look in the NFC, I think Green Bay is better, New Orleans is better, but if I had to pick a team that is a wild card representative, that's why it would be Tampa. Absolutely. In the AFC, for a while I thought Mahomes was gimmicky. He's just that good. I think he just finds a way to make things happen. They have talent everywhere. They have an outstanding tight end. Their defense has gotten much better. Andy Reid does a really good job of calling the games. I think actually one of the potential upsets in the first round is the Colts over Buffalo.
Really?
Thank you.
And I think that just because I think Rivers, I don't see the Colts going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But I think the Colts match up pretty well against Buffalo. I think when you get into the playoffs, things get a little tighter. Rivers has been around. And for one thing is he's not thrown off by the playoffs. He's not nervous by anything. He's a gunslinger. So that's what gives them a pretty good chance. Frank Wright calls a really good game. I think that's going to be a super competitive game. I think that if the Colts, don't turn the ball over and win that battle, they might just beat Buffalo, even though Buffalo's had a great season. And then I noticed this week, too, that Beasley and Diggs have both been limited in practice. And let's face it, in the NFL, everyone's limited in practice by this point. They're all dinged up. But if you're a wide receiver and you're dinged up, you might be limited. And maybe you can't do the types of things that they need Diggs and Beasley to do. So I wonder. I think Allen is an outstanding quarterback. I take nothing away from the season he's had. Sometimes in the playoffs, that experience is just so critical.
Also, Kyle was talking about getting hot. Jonathan Taylor this past month has been unstoppable.
That is true.
I mean, I played him in the fantasy playoffs too, which was my.
Okay, well, I'm just not a fan of the running backs getting real. I really feel like if you commit to stopping the run or anything, you can. Do
T.Y. Hilton's also been going off this past month too. He had done almost close to nothing, and this past month he's been putting up huge numbers. That offensive line started clicking. They have Darius Leonard, DeForest Buckner, the cornerback Xavier Rhodes.
Okay, well that Colts defense has also given up a couple of stink bombs throughout the year. I know Rodgers has played unbelievable this year, but they still did let up. I think they were the number 2 defense at the time. I think Rodgers still hung, 30 on them.
Yeah, he hung 34.
I would love to go back to our overrated NFL team because I think I called the Las Vegas
Oh, you
Raiders.
did. I was
and
gonna remind you of that.
And you know, it was funny because that following week they played really well and beat somebody, and I thought to myself, okay, well, I have to eat a little crow. But then they really kind of showed, man, at the end they just bombed.
Yeah.
I feel like it's every year with Gruden.
It's just I'm just not impressed, and I kind of feel like Gruden had his day, and that he's just not this guru that everyone predicts he's going to be. I think there's a lot of other guys out there who are, and it's interesting in the NFL with the coaching ranks because you got these young guns who for a while you're thinking, all right, it's got to be McVay, he's going to do this, and then look where they end up. I know they're in the playoffs, but I don't have much confidence that they're going to do much. And then you got old goats like Andy Reid, and you got Pete Carroll, and those guys, they find a way.
Yeah, they do.
You know, and Matt LaFleur is another young gun, right?
Another one.
Right. So, you know, it'll be interesting. The NFL playoffs are always very, very good just because it's generally teams making a small minor adjustment that wins it. It's just because the level of talent is so good.
Yeah, and that's also what makes Tampa so dangerous, just because of Tom Brady and
That's true.
his level of smart.
Yeah, and you know, don't get me wrong, I was kind of rooting for Brady to not perform well this year. Just honestly, I was sour. I was sour that he had left, but I think not that he's playing at his peak caliber, but I think he's still dangerous. And I think that with the team he's got, and Gronk's playing a little better, and he's got 2 or 3 running backs, and he's got Mike Evans, and they have enough they can do offensively where I think he can keep them in games.
You know, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Antonio Brown.
Antonio Brown looks like he's starting to get it going.
Right, I know. So who knows?
Thing is that just scares me about Tampa. It's just their defense. It's just like their defense has been vulnerable all year long. And to be honest, like when they played Green Bay, I really thought that was just more about Rodgers not playing good than it was a Tampa defense.
That could have been.
You know, Rodgers threw the late out route to Adams. That's just a reservation or a pick six. And then he had a wide open tight end over the middle who he overshot by about 10. You know, you don't make those 2 throws.
You think he does that again in Lambeau in the snow?
No, I don't.
So.
And it's just.
Well, you don't know the weather too. So.
You know, like
cold.
And it's just.
Gonna be
I don't even think it's a guarantee they beat the Washington football team this weekend because, like, you know, when the Washington football team is Alex Smith, they're 12-3 as their record with him, and just. And they have a good defense, and Brady's ultimate kryptonite in his career has been teams that can pressure the quarterback.
Yeah, that's true. Like the old Giants.
And it's just how the Giants win those suits because of Brady getting pressured. And
the DNs. That's true.
And you look at. I think the only thing Brady misses about Belichick is the game plans because you looked at so many times in the past. You know, they played J.J. Watt, they played Aaron Donald, the Super Bowl. Those premier pass rushers wouldn't even be a factor in the game.
Yeah.
You know, is Bruce Arians going to look at Chase Young and say, I have to eliminate this guy? I don't think he will.
Washington's defense is different, though, because every single one of their front 4 linemen can get to the quarterback.
Well, I know.
They can't really double anyone.
And that's just
and
what
Ryan Kerrigan and the linebackers also can get to the quarterback.
And that's just what Brady has a hard time against. And if it's the same thing for the Buccaneers defense, if they can't generate pressure on the passer, all of a sudden their secondary becomes Swiss cheese.
True.
Because they can't do the job by themselves. They've just been, you go ask Tyreek Hill who laid a big giant bomb on them in that first quarter. Like it's not. Oh man, I really want to see Brady win, but.
I think what this conversation points out, though, is how fortunate we are that we have football. The fact that we're able to talk and banter and have these conversations because it wasn't looking so good a while ago.
I didn't think we were going to have a season, to be honest.
Yeah, and I thought, the NFL looked like they were heading for shutdown at some point, but looks like they're going to be able to figure it out. And, it's nice. It's a nice respite from dealing with COVID and all the other issues we're dealing with. And clearly, as we know, college and pro football is not nearly as important as life, but it gives us a few hours on a Saturday and a Sunday to enjoy ourselves and
the one thing that
watch a game we like.
Yeah.
Takes your mind off from everything that's happening in the world.
That's right.
Definitely a lot of craziness happening in the world right now. And when you can look forward to a super fun weekend like we have planned this week, it makes you a little bit happier.
That's right. Get the crock pot ready and sit down and watch some good games.
I hope you guys at home have enjoyed the show. We are definitely excited to be on the couch for many hours this weekend.
Oh, yes.
So to get ready for a season, as always, up here, info@dsctv.com. We're going to be doing a lot more episodes, pretty much even through the end of college football, the NFL, and we're going to be, so remember, send suggestions, different jerseys you want to see in the bag, different celebrities you want to see, and what do you want us to talk about in the show. Any suggestions would be more than welcome here. Thank you again to Mr. Smith for coming on the show again.
Thanks for having me.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will be back here next week for another edition of Unpopular Opinion.